Hi, welcome to Cycling Informed's weekly tips. My name's David Heatley and this is what we're going to be covering off. How to avoid cycling cough in cold conditions, how to set up a bike for time trialing with clip-on bars, how to do group training. Now don't forget to follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. Now Dale's asked the question, why do I get a slight bronchial condition when riding for about 4 hours in the cold, even when I'm appropriately dressed? Now Dale, I'm not a doctor, but I think I know what might be happening here. I think it's to do with the cold air that's rushing into your lungs when you're breathing, and that's irritating your lungs, causing you to cough. Now there's a couple of ways that you can help alleviate this issue. One of them is to breathe in through your nose, and by doing that you warm up the air so that when it hits your bronchial tubes that there's less irritation. Now the other way of helping to reduce this issue is to place your tongue on the roof of your mouth. That's the tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and by doing so that just helps warm up the air as it's flowing through the bulk of your mouth into your bronchial tubes, and again that'll help reduce the irritation that you get when you breathe cold air in the mornings. Now Paul's asked a question about time trial clip-on bars and how to fit them to your bike. Now obviously there's a difference between clipping time trial bars onto your bike and having a time trial bike. And the main difference is that when you clip time trial bars onto a bike, you're generally clipping them onto a road bike. And the frame configuration is different to that of time trial bikes. Now the main difference is that road bikes generally have a higher head tube or a longer head tube. And that means that the top tube and where you mount your handlebars are higher. Now this is compounded by the fact that when you put clip-on bars on your bike, they usually sit on the top of your handlebars. Now that's one of the fundamental issues between a time trial bike and a road bike, in that the handlebars on a road bike will generally be set higher than a time trial bike. Now one of the most important things about these two aero positions is reducing your frontal area. And the largest restriction around your frontal area is to do with your head. So I've got some photos here of some good and bad setups when it comes to reducing frontal area. And the idea is that you want to set up a position so that your head is below your shoulders. Now this will help by reducing your frontal area, and that'll make you more aero. And when you're riding at fast speeds, the aerodynamics become critically important. And the faster you go, the more important they become. Now Paul's asked two other important questions. Do I need to move my seat forward to get into a good aero position? And what's the ideal length between the seat and the handlebars? So let's ask that first question around moving your seat forward. Now yes, moving your seat forward does help you getting into a better aerodynamic position, but that's only if you've got poor flexibility in your hamstrings. Now it's actually far more important to work on the flexibility in your hamstrings so that you can set your seat up in a very similar position to that you ride on your road bike. Now the reason for this is that you actually develop more power if you're in a very similar position to your road bike with regards to your seat fore and aft position. Now I'm talking about road racing and time trials related to road racing, and generally those time trials are around about 20 or 30 kilometers long. Now if you're riding shorter events, then of course you can bring your seat forward a little bit to get yourself into the aerodynamic position. But the idea is that the longer the event, the more comfortable you need to be in the time trial position. So it's important to set that seat up in a very similar position to your road bike. Now one of the other great things about keeping that position on your time trial bike similar to your road bike is that it means that you don't need to spend so much time adapting to your time trial position, because it's very similar to the position that you use on your road bike. Now we've had people take over a year to develop the similar sort of power on a time trial bike to that they develop on the road bike for this very reason. So it's important to keep that seat in a very similar position to what you have on your road bike. So what's the ideal length between the seat and the handlebars? Now ideally you'd want to look for a 90-degree angle in your arm. Now here's a photo of a person in a good time trial position, and what you can see is that their arm is at 90 degrees. So you'll see that there's a 90-degree angle at their elbow joint. Now to get this position set up properly, you'll need to have your handlebars set quite low. So ideally you want to be on a time trial bike. Now Casey's asked the question about group training. How do you get good quality group training? So one of the big issues about group training is that you generally, when you go out riding with your mates, you ride along a course and you go out and you smash each other over, and that's generally how group rides usually end up if they don't start off that way. Now one of the issues about this type of training is that you're at the mercy of the stronger rider. So if you're not so strong a rider, you'll find that at some point you're going to get dropped, and then your training session really is over. You get to ride home. Now some training groups, they do stop for slower riders, and this is obviously not so good for the faster riders. So the first thing about group riding is that you really need to get people of very similar ability riding together. Otherwise you need to structure the training session to take into account the faster and slower riders and divide them up into different sections of the circuit. So what we do to alleviate this issue is that we separate the riders. We may go through a warm-up period where both riders are taking part in that, both types of riders, and then we separate the riders and grade them depending on their ability. Now there are another couple of tactics that we use. One is to have a staggered time trial, kind of like a handicap race, and set off the slower riders first and then have the faster riders chase them down. Now another thing that we do is we set up two-up time trials, and what we'll do, very similar to the handicap system I've just mentioned, is that we'll team up stronger riders together and have them chase down teams of not so stronger riders. Now the other thing about group rides is that it's important to have a plan before you start, and that way you have some organisation around how the group ride's going to roll out. Now by doing so, it means that you're able to take into account all the abilities of the riders that you have on the group ride, and that's going to be really good to make sure that your faster riders and your slower riders are getting a really good training session. And look, this is far better than just having your riders just smash each other over in the ride. Now I hope you've enjoyed these cycling tips. My name's David Heatley from Cycling Inform.